All right, good morning, everybody. Or sorry, not morning, afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, you can post them. It should be below the video if you're on a smaller screen, like a phone. If you're on a larger screen, like a desktop computer, it should be to the right of the video. So it looks like we got one question here from Mark. So Mark asks, in the downswing, when the club is last parallel, what direction does the club handle point? Good question. So a lot of that depends on the kind of ball flight you're going for. I would say if you're going for a relatively straight ball flight and you want your club to be coming in fairly on a neutral path down to the ball. So this would be very, if I put my alignment stick here, if you imagine this is the target line, and here's my ball, right? If you want your club to be going in the direction of the target at impact and you are hitting an iron, assuming that your ball position is going to be relatively in the middle of the stance, then I would say you would want your the butt end of your club to be pointing slightly right of your toe line, right? Now, the reason why I say ball position is because it makes a difference, right? If your ball position is more forward, your club is going to tend to want to work more to the left by the time it gets to the ball. So that means that you actually need to have the club a little bit more pointing to the right at this point in the swing if you're a right-handed golfer at this point in the swing. So for a driver, for example, right, if I'm trying to hit a draw with my driver, I need because my driver ball position is more forward. It's generally going to be more closer to my lead foot, right? Because it's more forward, it's going to tend to want to work more to the left by the time it gets to the ball. So to deal with that, what I may do is I may have it a little bit more to the inside, pointing to the right of my target with the butt into the club. So that way, when it gets to the ball, it's more neutral when it gets to the ball. So if I'm wanting to hit like a fade, right? If I'm wanting to hit like a big slice, then relative to my target line, that butt into the club may actually be pointing to the left a little bit, right? Because I need to have my path going to the left with an open club face to be able to get the ball to slice. If I'm only wanting to hit like a baby fade, it may be in line with the target. It may be exactly because, and again, depending on ball position, right? If I'm in line with the target, that's going to be a little bit more of a path to the left if my ball position is more forward. But generally, that's what it's going to be. I like to see it a little bit to the right of the target line as we're coming down. For most people, I think that's going to be a good spot, and a little bit more to the right for a driver because the ball position is more forward. All right, let me refresh this. All right, so no new questions as of yet. So we'll go ahead and open it up to more questions. If you got your question, go ahead and post it. Like I said, it should be below the video or to the right of the video, depending on the size of the screen that you're using. While you all are coming up with questions, I'll just be doing some of the other, tasks I have to do today. So hope you all don't mind. All right, so we got a question from Mark. Says, "Great response. Many thanks, by the way. I really enjoy office hours and have learned tons. Awesome. That's great to hear, Mark. If you have any more questions, just let me know. Be happy to answer any more questions for you. If not, no worries. If you're just hopping on here, I'm just waiting for questions to be asked. At the moment, we don't have any questions on the board, so or any new ones anyway. So if you got a question, feel free to ask. If not, no worries. I'll just be taking care of some of my tasks that I got to work on.
All right. Just wanted to give a quick reminder. If you're just jumping on here, I'm just waiting for questions to be asked. I'm just taking care of some of my other tasks while you guys are stewing on questions. So if you got questions, now's a good time to ask because I can get to them right away. If not, no worries.
All right, so Justin says, question about shallowing. I'm getting caught between training my lower body and dropping the club. I'm not what to focus on first. Any thoughts? I'm caught between training my lower body and dropping the club. I mean, you have to do both. You can't train. You mean if you so let's say you just work on dropping the club. Well, you're going to be too shallow if you drop it, right? If you just work on training the lower body to rotate, well, now you're not going to be shallow. You have to do both. So the reality is that you have to do both, and in order to train to do both, you have to go slow. That's really if you're really having trouble, and I think you're probably overcomplicating it a little bit. It's really as simple as just putting something down on the ground and just doing what is intuitive to you to get the club to miss it, right? So, for example, if this is kind of from drill number 2 of the 20-minute shallowing fix, where Clay uses an impact bag. But you don't have to use an impact bag. You can use about anything. There's all kinds of ways to set up something to force the club to come from the inside or to give you feedback on whether you are or not, right? So if I put it here, right, so I put this behind my ball a little bit, I'm not measuring it, some amount behind my ball that would make it in the way if I were to come down steep. And then I want it to be a little bit to the right of my ball. So, so that way if I come down steep, I'm going to hit it, right? So if I'm here and I come down steep, I'm going to hit this box. In order to hit this ball, I have to shallow out this club. I have no choice, right? So I would just make swings that you do that feels the most intuitive to you to make that happen. That's what I would recommend doing. I wouldn't try to think about, I got to train my lower body. I got to train that's really overcomplicating it. It's really as simple as putting something like this down and then, doing what is intuitive to you to make it happen, because there are lots of ways to shallow out the club, right? So I would do what comes intuitively to you. And then if you want to tweak it from there, that can be fine. It's not necessary. It's not necessary per se, but and I would work with an instructor before you would delve into something like that to make sure that you're not wasting your time doing something. But this is really all you have to do to shallow out the club. I wouldn't complicate it more than that. So those would kind of be my thoughts on it, I suppose. All right, we got about 30 minutes left here. If you got any more questions, I'll be happy to answer. If not, no worries. Um, should the right elbow lead be in front of the hand on full shots? Um, I mean, depends on what point in the swing that you're talking about. What I would say is in the start of the downswing, I would say it is a good feeling to feel like the right elbow is kind of leading the way, right? That's going to help you to kind of shallow out the club, get that losing the arm wrestling. But, as I come down, my hands are going to start to catch up, right? I would say my hands have overtaken my right elbow, before I get to this club parallel point. Then from there, my hands are going to continue to be in front. But in the start of the downswing, yeah, I would say your right elbow is leading the way.
If you're just jumping on here, I'm just waiting for questions to be asked. We haven't really had very many questions. Had a few, but yeah, if you got questions, now's a good time to ask. Be happy to answer if you're confused about anything. Top speed golf system, the shallowing fix, the 20-minute distance fix. Um, those should be kind of your primary focus. Would be the courses. Um, sticking to those courses, sticking to doing the reps of the courses, and making those things second nature in your swing. Um, those would be what I would recommend doing outside of working with an instructor, doing like the online lessons, something like that.
So Dan S says, been hitting much more accurate, but noticing I am coming up short on most shots, about 15 yards. What direction? What direction would you go with this? Well, typically, if you're coming up short on your shots, it's either because you're mishitting the ball. So either maybe you're hitting a little bit behind the ball, chunking it a little bit, right? That can take about 15 yards off, certainly can. Um, you could also be not hitting it in the middle of the face. So there's a couple ways that you can look at this. So one would be if you go to the range, what I would do is I would take like a tee and scratch a line in the turf, and then place the ball to where if that line, let's say that the line that you scratched in the turf represented this alignment stick here, you would put the ball like right there, right to where the back of the ball would be right up against it, and then just hit shots and see where you're hitting the ground in relationship to that line. If you're hitting the ground like on the line, then you're good to go. It's not a problem. If you're hitting the ground before the line, that's a problem, right? So that would be something I would look at because you're chunking the ball a little bit if that is the case. You can also use foot power spray and spray a line on the ground. Do the exact same thing. Place, if this alignment stick represented the line that you sprayed on it, you would place the ball to where like the back of the ball would be up against that line, essentially. So that's the first thing I would look at. And then the other thing I would look at is where you're striking it on the face. If you're hitting it on the heel, that's pretty common, where you may be hitting the ball off of the heel. And the reason why I say that's pretty common for what you're talking about is because when you hit the ball off the heel, it's a little less detectable than if you hit it off the toe because the face doesn't twist as much. That something doesn't feel right, most likely, but it just doesn't twist as much. So you'll lose some distance when hitting it off the heel for a couple of reasons. So one, when you hit the ball off the heel, it does twist some. So you're going to lose some of that energy being transferred to the ball, right? Because the face isn't going to stay stable through contact, right? If I hit it in the center, face is going to be stable. I'm going to transfer as much energy as I am providing to the ball, right? If you hit it on the heel, the face is going to twist. You're not going to transfer as much energy to the ball. The other thing to keep in mind is that the heel is moving slower, right? So the edge of the heel can be moving like 7% slower than the center of the face. So if you're swinging, this would be a lot for an iron, but let's say you're swinging an iron 100 miles an hour, just to make the math simple, right? This part of the face right here could be moving like 93, 94 miles an hour. And that speed isn't going to be necessarily enough to take off 15 yards, depending on how far you're hitting it to begin with. But the loss of energy transference from the face twisting and the loss of speed from hitting it off the heel can certainly lead to 15 yards. So that'd be another thing that I would look at is where you're striking on the face. The last thing it could be is you could possibly have lost a little bit of speed, right? So that's the first two things are assuming you're swinging with the same club head speed you were before. Now, it's not common to just suddenly lose club head speed and drop 15 yards. But if you are, I don't know what you've been doing with your swing, but if you are making changes to your swing, it could lead to that. So I would just make sure, the first thing I would make sure of if you've lost some speed is to make sure that you're getting a full shoulder turn. If you're only bringing the club back to about right here, right, you may lose some club head speed. So that'd be another thing that I would check. So again, it's going to be either because of your poor contact from either hitting the ground before the ball or missed strikes on the face, most likely heel strike, right? That'd be my guess. Like if I had to put a wager down and guess, okay, why have you lost 15 yards? My guess would be you started to hit the ball off the heel a little bit. And if that is the case, just a quick thing to fix that would be to change your intention to hitting the ball off the toe. Just change your intention. Right now, you're trying to hit the ball in the center of the face, but what's actually happening, right? You're hitting it off the heel. So try to change your intention to hitting it off the toe, really commit to that. And if you actually hit the ball off the toe, then you can always tone it down. But I would actually literally try to hit the ball off the toe, and that will usually move the strike more to the center of the face. But if you overdo it, you can always tone it down. Suspect I'm not swinging as fully to be more accurate. That's possible, right? It could be you had a really, really long swing, and maybe that was a little bit faster, but you know, but it made things more difficult, right? You maybe had a harder time getting the club in the right spot or whatever it is, and maybe you've shortened things up. I would just make sure that you are getting a full turn. That's kind of the main thing. If you're getting a full turn, that's where a lot of your power is going to come from. Sometimes you can get a little bit more speed from getting some arm runoff, right? But sometimes that arm runoff, like if we just go too long with the arms like this, sometimes that can lead to making it very difficult to get the club in the right position to be accurate, right? So I would just make sure that we're getting a nice full shoulder turn. Try to get that left shoulder behind the ball, and that will get you in a good spot. You can still maintain some good arm structure when you do that. You don't have to break down the arms too much. Just make sure you're getting nice and wound up, and that should supply plenty of power for you, and also allow you to be accurate at the same time. All right. We got about 10 more minutes left. I will stay on right up until 10. So if you got, or not 10, up until 4 p.m. Eastern time. So if you got more questions, feel free to ask. If not, no worries.
So Rick M says, "Hey Q, is it necessary to swing up on the ball with the driver? Is the intention of swinging up to reduce spin?" Yes, if you can hit up on the ball, and also do it without adding more loft, you can reduce something called spin loft, which is where the spin comes from, right? Spin loft is basically your angle that's between. If you know, you can think of it this way. I know there's an instructor that does this, but this could represent spin loft, right? So here would be the horizon, right? The ground. This is my angle of attack, which is down, and then this is my loft, which would be pointing up, right? So if I can get this smaller, right, then I'll reduce spin. The bigger this is, the more spin it is. So let's say that this is 10 degrees down, and then my loft is like 40 degrees up. That's a spin loft of 50, right? That would be good if you're hitting a wedge shot where you want a lot of spin on the ball, right? Um, Now, if I'm hitting a driver, I don't. That would be very difficult to get that kind of loft. But if I'm hitting a driver, I want to reduce that spin loft, so that way I can. Now, if you're a low club head speed player, you want to be careful with taking off too much spin, because spin is also, when you don't have a lot of speed, spin can also help you keep the ball up in the air. So there is like a threshold there that you got to be careful with. But generally speaking, you want to reduce that. Ideally, I would say if you swing over 100 miles an hour, I would say for sure you want to be in the 2000s. I would say even if you swing 90 miles an hour, you want to be somewhere in the 2000s of spin. If you're swinging in the 80s, the 70s a mile per hour, you may want to be in the upper 2000s to 3000s for spin, ideally, to help you to hit the ball farther, to help the ball stay in the air a little bit more. Because if it doesn't have enough spin on it, it may not stay up in the air. But if you have a lot of speed and you put too much spin on it, it may balloon, and then it's not going to go anywhere, right? So that's what I mean. Usually around 2000s, in the 2000s of spin is going to be pretty good. The average tour player has about 2600 RPMs of spin. So that would be kind of what we want to do. So yeah, we want to hit up on it. So that way, not only to get the ball up in the air, right, but also to reduce the amount of spin, right? So high launch, low spin, that's going to help you to hit the ball farther for the overwhelming majority of golfers. If we hit down on the ball, it's going to be more spin, but it's also going to launch lower, right? And those are going to be kind of low lasers. If you have a lot of club head speed, you can do that. There are tour players that hit down on the ball a little bit. When I say a little bit, I'm talking a little bit, like a degree or two, like Brooks Koepka, for example. But Brooks Koepka swings 120 plus miles an hour, so you can do that when you have that. Dana says, is a carry on to Mark's question: how far in front of the ball should the low point of the arc be? To Mark's question. Oh, okay. For hitting a ball on the ground, it's going to be 3 to 4 inches in front of the ball. This is generally where the low point of the arc is going to be. All right, I gotta go. Thanks everybody for joining me. I'll be back. I won't be back tomorrow. We won't have office hours tomorrow.
No worries. But yeah, it's 3 to 4 inches in front of the ball. Um, Now, if you're hitting up on the ball, the low point has to be before the ball. It just depends on how far up you want to hit on the ball. If you want to hit more up on the ball, you have to have the low point more before the ball, right? If you want to hit more level with the ball, it's going to be closer to the ball. Or if you want to hit dead level, it's going to be pretty much at the ball, right? So a lot of that depends on how far up and down. There's more variable there because it really depends on how far up and down you want to hit on the ball. But for shots that are off the ground, it's going to be 3 or 4 inches in front, right? Is what they found with tour players, right? Hopefully that makes sense. I gotta go. We will talk to you on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody.